Maureen Kamari of Amari Baking Center, author of How to Start Up a Small Baking Business. Welcome to our YouTube channel. So in this channel, we offer baking tutorials, cake decoration tutorials, and baking for business advice. So if this is something you're interested in, make sure to hit the subscribe button and like this video as well. I'll be covering the different types of flours that you're gonna find in baking recipes. So when it comes to baking, most recipes call for wheat flour. And in the baking world, there are three main categories of flour that are used. One is called all-purpose flour. This is supposed to be a flour that's generally used for any type of baking. Then there's what we call bread flour, which has a higher gluten content. This gives you a more elastic, better bread. But the thing about it is you can't use it for cake because the gluten content is really high. And then the third type of flour that's used in the baking industry a lot is the cake flour. This has the least amount of gluten and makes really amazing cakes. Has very low percentage of gluten, but is not really good for baking bread. So if you're in the baking industry, those are the three main categories of flours that are going to be used. So the first flour that you're going to find in most recipes is all-purpose flour. Here's an example of one of the all-purpose flour by one brand that's really popular. Now usually this is the best type of flour to use when you're baking most recipes. The reason is that it's all-purpose. That means it's supposed to be used for most baking. This type of flour does cakes, it does cookies, it does bread, it bakes most of the stuff that you need. And most of these flours are actually found in supermarkets or shops in your local area. So it's the best type of flour. It has no any type of raising agent, so it's a nice canvas to actually start baking with. So if you have all-purpose in your pantry, then you're good to go. The other type of flour you're going to find in a lot of shops for baking is self-rising flour. So this is actually a type of all-purpose flour that has a raising agent added to it. So usually if you're making cakes or cookies or pancakes, this is a perfect flour to use because it already has some raising agent in it. However, when you're baking cakes, you might have to add a little bit more baking powder in there because sometimes it doesn't raise the cake as well. So what I would advise, if you're using self-rising flour, for every 1 cup of flour, add a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder when it comes to some of the cakes. The other type of flour used a lot in bread making is called bread flour, and some people also know it as baker's flour. Now this is a commercial flour that's used especially for those people who are mass producing breads or they're mass producing yeast pastries. Like I mentioned, is a very high content of gluten, which makes it really elastic and really stretchy. And in Kenya especially, or at least in East Africa, it's actually usually sold in 50 kg bags. So usually you need to buy it in bulk. So if you're looking to get into the baking business and you're looking to produce bread, you want to buy bread flour or baker's flour. But usually it's really hard to find it in 1 kg or smaller quantities. Niche that has come up is gluten-free baking, and a lot of the times we're looking to make sure that you bake your breads or your cakes or cookies with a flour that has no gluten in it. And gluten is a protein that's found when you add water to wheat flour. So there's some people who are actually allergic to gluten, and if you have that kind of condition, you start looking for flours that you can substitute in your baking that don't have any gluten. So some of the flours you can use are like almond flour. You may have heard of that, and that's just almond nuts that have been grounded and then you sieve that flour. Another one you can use is rice flour, because rice doesn't have any gluten, so when you grind that up, and you can get that type of rice flour. One of the ones you can have, rice flour is basically very white and looks like this. These are some of the flours you can actually use if you're looking for gluten-free baking. And another type of grain you can start using for your gluten-free baking are like millet or sorghum. Those can also be used for gluten-free baking. So there's various types of gluten-free flours that you can use. My advice always though is to always experiment and test them out, and then realize that it'll never really give you the same exact result as wheat flour, but some of them do come pretty close to that. You can also search in stores, food stores. They're actually people who sell gluten-free flours for baking. So if you also search for those, you can find them as well. Now to explain cake flour. In East Africa, in Kenya, most of the time it's really hard to find cake flour being sold by itself unless you're a commercial bakery that's importing that kind of flour. So what you can do is tablespoons and replacing the 2 tablespoons with corn starch. That reduces the gluten content in your flour, and that gives you a nice cake flour that you can use for baking cakes, and it'll give you really soft cakes that have a really nice crumb. Type of flour that I actually want to make a mention on, even though it's not fully flour, is boxed cake mixes, or as some people call them, premixes. Now you can find these in supermarkets, and they're like dry ingredients that are ready to mix in with other liquid ingredients to make a cake. Now please note that is not flour by itself. Usually has flour, some raising agent, maybe some flavoring, and maybe a preservative. And what you're supposed to do is add some liquid, egg, and mix it in a fat to actually make it a cake. Please note that is not flour. It's a premix for you to be able to add your liquid and wet ingredients to make a cake. The other type of flour that is out in the market is whole wheat flour, or in some stores they sell atta wheat flour. So this is supposed to be a healthier version of wheat flour that really doesn't have the husks removed, and it usually looks brown, right? Some people call it whole wheat flour, some people call it brown bread flour. So you can use that if you're looking for a healthier option, and it can actually be used mainly for bread. It's really good for bread, and it can also sometimes be used for cake. So if you're looking for a healthier option of wheat flour, you can use brown bread flour, you can use atta flour, you can use whole wheat flour. Now please do note you have to experiment with them because each of them give you different results, and then this type of flour has the least amount of gluten. So if you're making cake, your cake might not rise as much and it might not give you the same exact texture. So you need to know every time you use something that has less gluten, it's going to give you a different result. But if you're looking for healthier options, it's a really good option to go with. So I hope this video has been really helpful to you. Make sure you join us for our next segment. We're going to be talking about the type of fats and oils you can be able to use in your cake making and general baking. Please do leave a comment if you have any question on types of flours used for baking. Make sure you hit the like button and remember to subscribe to our channel. Thank you. I'll see you guys next time.